Hi folks, it's Tuesday 14th of April. First of all, hope you all had a great Easter weekend. I managed to stay safe, certainly if you was in the UK, great weather we had. But it was great being out in the garden, as I was over the course of the weekend. Fixing up the 2 tanks that we got delivered last Monday from the guys at Manor Koi. Tanks I mentioned earlier on the last 2 videos. So over the course of the weekend, managed to get these plumbed in, hooked up to their filtration systems, 2 EazyPods that are running. So what I'm going to do today is just talk about the tanks, talk about the way they've been set up, and talk about the way they're intended to be worked. And also I want to talk a little bit about the size of the tanks and the size and the sort of systems that someone can set up if they want to get into keeping koi. And they don't need thousands and thousands and thousands of gallons. You don't need drums, you don't need thousands of pounds worth of filtration system just to start keeping koi. I get very, very frustrated the number of times that I see on Facebook groups and things and on forums where somebody says, oh, I've got a 500 gallon pond, I've got a 1,000 gallon pond. People say, oh, it's too small for koi. It's absolute nonsense, complete and utter nonsense. And there was a story, a question the other day on an American forum or American Facebook group. And a guy had a 250 gallon tank pond and he wanted to keep a few butterfly koi. And people were like, it's too small to keep butterfly koi. You know, it's absolute nonsense. If you want to get involved in keeping koi, you don't have to start with thousands and thousands of gallons. You don't have to start with a state-of-the-art system. It's all just about understanding what the system can do for you and what the limitations of the system are. You know, there's no point expecting to grow jumbo koi if you've got a 1,000 gallon pond. But you can buy small koi and you can enjoy small koi. They don't have to grow big. It's not all about size. Learn to keep them, and once you've got started in keeping koi and you realise it's something for you, then if you want to, move on. So this system, 1,000 gallons, just over. And it maintains these fish in absolute perfect environment. Some will say this is completely overstocked, but the system is designed, it's a system. It has a filtration system which is capable of way more than it's being asked to do in terms of the volume of water, if you take that as the parameter. But it turns this system over every 30 minutes approximately. There's 150 litres of K1 meter in the Nexus, and the fish thrive. This is where all the fish were grown from last year's spawning over the course of the summer into the winter. And now I was a potential parent fish for this year's spawning. So it's just really a case of, I would hate people to be put off trying to keep some koi just because somebody says a pond has to be X thousand gallons or whatever. There's very many ways to keep koi. I know many breeders in Japan, farmers in Japan, who have 1 or 2 ton systems where they raise tosai over the winter. And if that's what you want to do, as long as you understand what the limitations of any given system are, then potentially you can do an awful lot. In fact, the truth is, maintaining a large pond, multiple thousands of gallons, is sometimes just as difficult. It's expensive to run, but you can learn koi keeping in a relatively small space. And certainly now in the UK, the tanks like these that I've used from Manor Koi, or the one we installed last year from Manor Koi, which is a slightly larger bespoke one. The guys at Denby Koi Ponds as well, with their fibreglass tanks that they make, they're absolutely ideal for anybody wanting to get started in the hobby, dip their toe a little bit, hook it up to something like a Nexus or an EazyPod, as I've done here with these two tanks, and you've got a proper workable system that's relatively easy to maintain. It's relatively low cost. I mean, you can set one of these tanks, an EazyPod, for less than £2,000, and certainly even some of the slightly bigger tanks that Denby do as well, for the same sort of price point. They're ideal for somebody wanting to start in the hobby. If you decide it's not for you, you've not built a brick-built bunker in the ground. You've got something that can be taken apart, sold off, and to the next person who wants to either have a quarantine tank or is looking to expand some, a little growing pond or something. So everything is reusable, which just makes it absolutely ideal. Anyway, I'm going to show you a little bit more around the tanks here, how they're set up, explain how I see them being used over the course of this summer. Okay, so first off, two tanks. Each tank holds around 435 gallons, plus the filtration system, which is the EazyPod. So we're looking just over 450 gallons per system. But this actually works, it's plumbed up to work as one. Or they can work independently. That's an option that I have. And I'll show you around the other side and show you how that works and how that can pan out as necessity dictates over the course of their use. So two EazyPods set up, gravity fed. Each has a pipe coming from the bottom drain into, I'm not sure if you can see down there, a bit dark, but as it runs, it can run from the bottom drain straight into the EazyPod. Then each unit has its own variable EA pump, which runs the return. But the pipe runs all the way through, joining both tanks along the bottom drain run there. And there's two valves there, two slide valves on that pipe. So the pipe can be open or can be closed. At the moment it's open, so theoretically it's actually almost 1,000 gallons of water working as one. But I do acknowledge that the way the pipe returns are done at the moment, which is one pump just straight into the same tank, there's probably very little mixing of water between the two tanks. But that's simple for me to do. If I was to switch this pump, for example, to return to the left tank and the left tank to the right tank, then that water's 100% being mixed through the two filtration systems. If for any reason I need to take one filter offline, I can run one pump and return to the two tanks as well. So I have full flexibility about how I want to run the system. Yeah, so it may be that I, for example, need one tank to be used in isolation because there's quarantine fish in it. It may be that some has younger fish or older fish, or there's a whole number of reasons why I may want to run them independently. Or most of the time I will see them being used as a single unit, and the advantage of that being 1,000 gallons of water stays more stable than 500 gallons of water. So that's the main reason. So, but I have the option if I need to, that I can take those out. If we look inside the EazyPod, the media's just gone in here, so it's still very buoyant. Just a note on which units these are. I actually purchased in error from Evolution Aqua the complete unit with a UV. And I was told when I mentioned it on Facebook, EA content went, "Oh, you can't run those gravity fed." So all I've done is strip the UV units out of them at the moment. So I'm a huge fan of the automatic EazyPod. I think they're absolutely fantastic units. The main pond here runs on one of those. The big problem with pump fed systems is the inconvenience of not having anything before the filter in terms of taking waste out. The way I've actually run the one here, before the automatic EazyPod, there's a small vortex which feeds from the bottom drain, gravity fed, and then there's a pump inside the vortex which pumps to the EazyPod automatic. It works perfectly, works absolutely perfectly, but it's just another thing that you have to introduce into the system. But it's an excellent option, really is an excellent option, that if you have access to a small vortex or something, or any small tank, just to have a bottom drain feeding it by gravity, then pump from there into the EazyPod, then it works great. It's a very viable option. I chose this time to go with gravity fed, just because I wanted to avoid that extra piece of kit to buy in the way of the vortex. And as I spoke earlier about the modular kind of system, and the fact that if something needs to be moved on, or if someone was buying this sort of system as a starting point, the same is here for me. We put these tanks in here this year. In a few years' time, I fully foresee they won't be here at all, and they'll be moved somewhere else. So that's the reason why it's very important that everything I'm building at the moment, which was the same logic with the tank that we put in last year, was the idea that eventually at one point in time it's likely to be moved on to hopefully a larger facility somewhere else. So that's really what this system's about and how it's going to work. Anybody's got any questions about how it's set up, please do drop me a line. That's it really. Hopefully we'll get some fishing here in the next few days and get this system properly running. There's lots of cosmetic work left to do on these tanks. I've got some insulation boards coming, some polystyrene insulation boards, which will run all the way around the tank sides to try and maintain a bit of the temperature in the tank. It's all going to be clad with wood eventually. Unfortunately, it's a project which has been very much hindered by the coronavirus situation. Access to materials and obviously is somewhat restricted, so we may do as much as we can just to get it up and running. So as I'm glad over the course of this last weekend we managed to get it up and running. We get some fishing in the next few days probably, and then spawning really is just a few weeks away, which is pretty exciting. So look forward to seeing you in the next video. So any questions, just drop me a line.